At the beginning of the movie, we see Jessica Johnson, or JJ, a high school teacher, grading papers at the local cafe. However, Jessica's peaceful morning is interrupted by the couple seated at the next table. The woman seems to appreciate the man for flying her out to Norway, but tells him that this isn't what she signed up for. In the meanwhile, the waiter calls for Jessica Johnson to collect her coffee. As it turns out, both women share the same name, which creates confusion. The man, whose name is Henrik, gets up to collect the coffee order and hands it to his ex-girlfriend, assuming it to be hers, who spits it out since she only drinks chai tea. Frustrated that he doesn't even know her preferences after all this time, the ex-girlfriend stomps out of the cafe, leaving Henrik to apologize to JJ. Out on the street, Henrik once again apologizes to JJ for the mix-up and offers to help her with the papers she's holding. However, he ends up dropping them all, along with her coffee, as the wind scatters them across the street. As JJ rushes to collect them all, she asks Henrik to stop helping, who apologizes for having messed up because of his injured leg. With all the papers collected, Henrik admits to being a mess in a moment of self-reflection. However, JJ comforts him by saying that her students have it worse. It seems like she wants to say something, but she changes her mind at the last second, leaving Henrik with only a Merry Christmas. As she walks away, Henrik watches on woefully, touched by the kindness of a stranger, when he notices one of the papers on the ground. At the school, JJ is busy with work when Henrik surprises her by stopping by. He brings her coffee to make up for before, a cupcake, and the paper she left behind. However, as he hands her the paper, he asks Jessica to turn the D into a C, to cheer him up. Amused by his request, Jessica doesn't waste a second to change the grade. He then notices the troll on her desk, and immediately recognizes it's from Bergen. Apparently it belonged to Jessica's grandmother, who, despite having the troll, had never been to Norway. As Henrik prepares to leave, he stays back to ask Jessica about what she was going to say on the street, before she changed her mind. Upon this, Jessica reveals that he should have said something to the woman. She also takes a jab at the girl for dumping Henrik without taking the free plane ticket to Norway. Satisfied upon hearing her answer, Henrik leaves. However, he comes back a moment later, asking Jessica to take the ticket. However, Jessica scoffs at the idea. Not one to easily give up, Henrik tries to convince her by pointing out how the ticket is in her name, and how she has a troll from Bergen. He believes that it's all fate. However, Jessica finds the idea ridiculous, since she doesn't seem to believe in fate. Despite her reluctance, Henrik leaves her with his phone number and the flight details. At the University of Minnesota, Jessica meets with her department chair, Bill, to ask for an extension for her dissertation. However, Bill doesn't seem too eager to give her one after having already given her two, one to care for her grandmother, and one to deal with her loss. Disappointed, Jessica gets up to head out, but Bill calls out to her, promising to give her the extension, under the condition that she goes to Norway. Later at night, Jessica is sitting at her desk, admiring the troll and her grandmother's picture. It's clear that she shared a close connection with her late grandma. Jessica then opens up the photo frame to take out a black and white picture of her young grandmother with the troll, the back of which is signed, Bergen. Not wanting to miss the chance to connect with her grandmother, Jessica makes up her mind and rings up Henrik, confirming her plans to go to Norway. The next day, the two arrive in Bergen. As they leave the airport, it's clear that Jessica has grown more comfortable around Henrik, as she cracks jokes. She prepares to part ways as her taxi arrives. However, Henrik offers a cheaper alternative, the Bergen light rail, which Jessica happily agrees to. On the train, Henrik fills Jessica in on Norwegian culture. However, a man in the seat behind them, who's staring at Henrik intensely, catches JJ's attention. She points it out to Henrik, who simply brushes her off. Dissatisfied with his nonchalance, JJ calls him out for not even looking in the man's direction before answering her. The two get off together at their station, where Henrik's sister Nora enthusiastically greets the two. She assumes JJ to be Henrik's girlfriend, and drags her off to her stepdaughter's show before Jessica can get a word in. Jessica seems uncomfortable, but agrees upon Henrik's insistence. After the show, JJ sits down with Henrik's family and finally gets the chance to reveal the truth about their relationship. She then prepares to take her leave to check in at her hotel, the Viking. However, upon hearing the hotel's name, everyone makes a face, revealing several problems at the hotel. And so they offer Jessica a better alternative, a room at Henrik's grandmother's house. Jessica seems apprehensive about the proposal at first, but quickly changes her mind upon hearing about the hotel's many problems. At Henrik's grandmother's house, the two settle in. Jessica takes off her shoes while talking to Henrik about paying his grandmother. However, Henrik's focus turns to Jessica's thin socks, asking her if she doesn't get cold. Upon which Jessica reveals, just a little. Later, JJ introduces herself to Henrik's grandmother Astrid. She then heads to her room. However, as she walks away, Astrid also takes note of Jessica's socks. The next morning, Jessica meets with Astrid in the kitchen. She shows her the troll, explaining the connection to her grandmother, and asks if she would know where it's from. Astrid asks about whether Jessica can ask her grandma herself. Sadness washes over JJ's face as she hears her question. Seeing her predicament, Astrid points her to a shopping street for tourists, Bergen. With a destination in mind, Jessica prepares to head out when she notices a warm pair of socks by her shoes. She seems touched by the kindness. At the market, Jessica goes from shop to shop, asking about the origin of her grandmother's troll, but her efforts bear little fruit. Later, she meets up with Henrik. The two go back and forth about the socks Astrid gifted her, and the text she sent Henrik about bringing food for dinner. However, as they're walking, Jessica notices a man sitting in the distance, eyeing Henrik with much contempt. Jessica points him out to Henrik. However, he brushes off her concern, once again saying that the man is not staring at him, without even looking in his direction. The stranger even takes out his phone to snap Henrik's picture, but Henrik maintains the same nonchalant attitude. In fact, he seems like he wants to get out of there as soon as possible. Later, on a bench, Jessica and Henrik are sitting down. She texts Bill updating him about the trip. Jessica reveals to Henrik that she's actually mad at Bill, which sparks Henrik's interest. He asks Jessica to tell him more about it on their walk back to home. However, as they get up to leave, two boys bump into Henrik, calling him a quitter in Norwegian. Concerned, Jessica asks what the two boys said to him. However, Henrik brushes it off, not wanting to discuss the subject. Jessica asks if it was related to the two men staring at him before, upon which Henrik says yes. She beckons him to tell her more, but Henrik turns her down. Upon observing his reluctance to talk about the subject, Jessica jokes about Googling him back home, which immediately puts Henrik on the edge. He asks her to not search him up, promising to tell her about it later, which quells her curiosity for the moment. At night, Jessica enjoys dinner with the rest of the family. She engages in a cheerful conversation about Christmas and learns that the girl from the bar was not Henrik's girlfriend, but his assistant. The next day, Jessica accompanies Henrik to his fitting for Nora's wedding. He steps out in a traditional Norwegian outfit, which amuses Jessica. She snaps a picture, not to send to Bill, but for herself. Later, the two sit on a bench outside Bergen University, the one Bill asked Jessica to visit. As she snaps pictures for Bill, she tells Henrik about how she wanted to be on TV, but chose to stick to research instead. However, she doesn't believe that research is her calling. Later, the two are walking around town, as Jessica tells Henrik about how she got a job as a physics teacher while grieving the loss of her grandmother. However, the conversation is cut short when a group of boys bump into Henrik on purpose. After having watched the town's residents treat Henrik rudely time and time again, Jessica finally sits Henrik down and asks him to tell his story. Henrik reveals that he used to be a downhill skier with a lot of potential. The townspeople expected him to bring home an Olympic medal. However, during an intense race at the World Cup, Henrik lost control at the very last jump, leaving him with many injuries, the worst of which was the limp. Following the incident, Henrik spent 2 years in the States for specialist consultation and therapy. His assistant, the one from the cafe, was helping Henrik manage things. For this very reason, Henrik dreaded coming back home for years. He couldn't find the confidence to face his coach and teammates, or watch the video of his accident. He bears a solemn look as he reveals that his leg will never be like that again, nor will his mind. Jessica tries to cheer him up by asking him to model for traditional Norwegian couture, pulling out the picture from before, which lightens up the mood. Right then, Astrid texts Henrik to bring home a Christmas tree. Jessica gets up and offers Henrik her hand, signifying how close the two have gotten over time. At the Christmas tree market, the two look around for trees when Jessica spots a carver. She walks up to her and asks about her grandmother's troll. However, she doesn't find out much, except that the troll is really old, and that it doesn't bear any initials that could identify the carver. Jessica seems disappointed, but not yet ready to give up. The next day, she's working on her dissertation when Nora walks into the room. Desperate for a break, Jessica happily accompanies Nora to shop for her morning gift, a Norwegian tradition, and her dress fitting. While Nora tries on the dress, she recalls the tale of how she met Mark, her husband. Back then, Nora was touched by Mark's kindness following an incident, and before she knew it, she was marrying him. Jessica seems touched by her story. However, Nora turns the tables by asking if she noticed that Henrik doesn't limp while walking beside Jessica. The question catches Jessica off guard, but she's quick to gather herself and deny it. Nora theorizes that Henrik must be healing on the inside, and it's helping him on the outside. Realizing the part that she's playing in Henrik's healing, Jessica agrees. However, she wishes for Henrik to feel better about being in Bergen, which perks Nora up, hinting that she has something in mind. Later, at the house, Jessica is sitting down with Astrid learning how to knit socks. Right then, Henrik stops by upon receiving Jessica's text. Apparently, she asked him to accompany her to Treden, since it can be tricky to find, and she's picking up a bottle of wine for Nora. Henrik happily agrees, and the two head out, but not before giving Astrid a cheeky smile, hinting that something is up. At the bar, Jessica picks up the bottle of wine, but as they prepare to head out, Henrik is confronted by his old teammates. The tension in the air is palpable as the men ask Henrik to pay up for not bringing a medal home. The two assume a stance to fight. However, as the man lunges at Henrik, he embraces him instead of punching him, which catches Henrik off guard. The men happily hug Henrik, celebrating his return and asking him to pay up with drinks. It seems like, despite Henrik's fears, they weren't mad at him at all. Right then, Mark walks in announcing that this is his bachelor's party, something arranged by everyone, including Jessica. She leaves the men to enjoy themselves and meets up with another carver. This time, Jessica is able to find a clue at AAA, carved on the ridge. However, her excitement soon turns to disappointment when the carver reveals that there's no one who goes by those initials in Bergen's small-knit community of wood carvers. Still, Jessica is grateful for the clue. Later, Jessica is sitting outside the University of Bergen, staring ahead, when a passerby notices her. After introducing herself, the passerby offers to give JJ a tour of the campus. Later, JJ enthusiastically rings up Bill, while sipping coffee at a cafe, telling him about the work at the university and how they would love to meet him. When the call ends, Henrik joins her, still recovering from the bachelor party. He thanks her for bringing him and his friends together. The conversation then shifts to wedding cakes and Norwegian weddings. However, Henrik goes silent out of the blue as he hears his coach's name. He turns around and spots Coach Anders at the counter. The two lock eyes and Anders comes over. The conversation is short, as Anders leaves after passing on his congratulations to Nora for the wedding. Later, Jessica is in the kitchen with Astrid. As Astrid bakes a cake for a wedding, Jessica shares memories of her grandmother, about how she would watch her bake and help with cleaning up later. Astrid points out how JJ doesn't speak of her mother as much. The question catches JJ off guard. However, she offers an explanation saying that her mother was sick when she was a child, and she passed away when she was little. Following her death, JJ's grandmother stepped in to care for her, and when the tables were turned, she returned the favor. It's clear that Jessica loved her grandmother very much. Seeing how much Jessica misses her, Astrid offers to fill the vacant spot in her life in a heartfelt moment. Moved to tears, Jessica happily takes her up on the offer. She then updates Astrid about the latest development in her troll hunting. Recognition flashes across Astrid's face as she hears Jessica mention the initials. She says that one of her friends in Mount Floyen might know something, and immediately rings them up. Later, the two arrive at Astrid's friend's house, who turns out to be Coach Anders. Although first uncomfortable about having to chat with Anders, Jessica quickly gathers herself and shares her story. She pulls out the troll to show to him, upon seeing which tears well up in Anders' eyes. It's clear that he knows something about the troll, and perhaps even shares a close relationship with Jessica's grandmother, Florence. Later, the three are sitting in a troll forest, where Anders reveals that this was Florence's favorite spot. He was the one who carved the troll from a piece of spruce, right there. He reveals that Florence came to Bergen years ago, to care for her pregnant cousin and 2 kids at the time. Anders ended up running into one of the kids on his bike one day while they were with Florence, and before he knew it, they were falling in love. Eventually, Anders had to enlist in the military, since it was compulsory back then, and by the time he came back, Florence had left Bergen. They couldn't keep in touch, since there was no internet back then. Anders had tried writing a few letters, but he never got a response. Touched by the story of their love, Jessica is tearful. However, she musters up the courage to ask Anders about when Florence left Bergen. As it turns out, Florence had Jessica's mom only a few months after leaving Bergen, implying that she might be Anders' daughter, making Jessica his granddaughter. Shocked, Anders struggles to digest the news. He asks Jessica about the name of his daughter. However, Jessica, overwhelmed, is unable to answer any questions. She gets up to leave, preferring to walk the long way back home. Later, Astrid reaches home, where Henrik is setting up the tree. He asks about Jessica's whereabouts. Upon watching the solemn expression on Astrid's face, Henrik quickly dashes out to meet Jessica, who's walking the trail alone, crying to herself. Upon catching sight of Jessica in the distance, Henrik runs towards her, despite his limp. Jessica, who has noticed his presence, finds herself relieved. Henrik immediately embraces her, while Jessica finds comfort in his arms, grateful for his presence. Jessica tells him about having a family in Bergen. She calls it crazy, but Henrik says it's fate. Later at night, Jessica is working on her dissertation when Henrik calls her from outside, asking her to put on her warmest clothes. He takes her to the harbor without revealing as to why he's brought her there. As Jessica's curiosity builds up, Henrik asks her to turn around. Jessica is greeted with a mesmerizing view of the northern lights. Apparently, Henrik had checked the meteorology report, which predicted the phenomenon for the night. He wanted to show her the lights since they were both feeling a little lost, and he hoped the lights would show them the right path. Touched by his sentiments and his concern for her, Jessica thanks him and rests her head on his shoulder as both of them gaze at the lights. The next morning, Jessica is trying on a dress for the wedding when Astrid walks in. She complains to Astrid about not having a proper dress for the wedding, and her worries about pissing Nora off. Astrid offers a solution and gifts her with one of her old bunnet dresses. Touched by her act of kindness, Jessica appreciates the gesture, but she seems apprehensive about wearing the dress, saying that she doesn't want to suddenly start pretending that she's Norwegian. However, Astrid comforts her, saying that it's fine, and perhaps she is Norwegian after all. Jessica is once more touched by her words of kindness. The two ladies later step out in the living room, dressed in traditional clothing, where Henrik and his dad are already waiting for them. Henrik appreciates Jessica in her new clothes. The four then proceed to take some pictures to mark the occasion when Nora walks in her wedding dress, leaving everyone speechless. Right then, Mark walks in with Mia. He gets down on one knee to propose to Nora again before the wedding, as part of Norwegian tradition. Nora teases Mark a bit by stalling, but is quick to say yes upon Mia's insistence, causing everyone to erupt in cheers. The family then heads out to the church for the ceremony. Henrik's dad and Henrik make a toast before moving on to the cake ceremony. Henrik wants to help himself to cake, but Nora drags him off to the dance floor. He asks Jessica to save him some while he heads off. With Henrik gone, Jessica sits down with Astrid. She proceeds to thank Astrid for helping her with the troll mystery. Astrid lifts her spirits, saying how Anders and JJ are already family, since they both loved the same person. With her eyes on Henrik, Jessica reveals that she might be falling for Astrid's grandson. Astrid seems assumed by her sentiments, joking that he's an acquired taste. JJ then asks Astrid if she believes in fate, to which Astrid says yes. JJ thinks hard on her words, signifying that she might be finally letting go of her reservations. At night, JJ goes to visit Anders at his house, letting him know that his daughter was named after him, hinting that she's ready to accept him as her family. Later, the family returns home, where they proceed to celebrate Christmas. They set up the tree, exchange gifts, and sing traditional Norwegian songs. Jessica ends up receiving a lot of socks. Right then, Astrid brings in Anders. Henrik seems uncomfortable by his presence, but pushes through it. Meanwhile, Anders sits down next to Jessica and tells her about how Florence was bad at knitting, and yet she still kept at it, pulling out a scarf that she knitted. He hands it to Astrid as a Christmas gift. Jessica seems grateful for being able to connect with her grandmother like this, and returns the favor by gifting Anders the troll he carved. Emotional, Anders says that he doesn't need a DNA test to find out if Jessica truly is his granddaughter. To him, she already is. Jessica agrees with his words. Upon seeing that Jessica is finally ready to accept him as her grandfather, Anders gathers the courage and pulls out another gift, a key to an apartment in his basement. He wants Jessica to stay there, so that she can complete her dissertation, and perhaps even connect with her grandmother better by staying in Bergen. She seems to be considering taking him up on his offer when Astrid cuts in, saying that Jessica already has a home with her, and she offers breakfast. The conversation then turns to light banter about where Jessica will stay, before Anders speaks up and asks to talk to Henrik in private. Realizing that the two men need to talk, Astrid gets up and asks everyone to join her in the kitchen to clean up. With the room to themselves, Anders says that he has a gift for Henrik as well. However, Henrik dissolves in shame, saying that he doesn't deserve anything from his coach, which angers Anders. He forces a coin into his hands, one given to him by Florence, and says that no one is mad at Henrik. They all respect his decision. The only person mad at Henrik is Henrik himself, and it's high time he forgives himself. Anders also says that the only reason he didn't retire was because he wanted Henrik to come back and take his place as coach. His words carry weight as Henrik finds himself feeling lighter. He later steps out for a walk with Jessica, revealing the coach's offer, and how he finally gathered the courage to watch the video of his accident. He realizes that it was wrong of him to shut everyone out, but he's glad for the chance to turn around his mistake. He talks about taking the coach up on his offer and bringing home a gold for Bergen. But he says that it might not be possible, since he's thinking about following a woman to Minnesota. Realizing what he's implying, Jessica asks about what his decision would be if the woman in question were to stay in Bergen. She already has 2 places to stay, pointing out that it might be fate after all, bringing them together. Delighted with her decision, Henrik pulls out another gift for Jessica, a northern light crystal necklace, to comfort Jessica the next time she feels lost. Touched by the gift, Jessica leans in to kiss Henrik. However, before the two lock lips, Jessica stops to yell at the young boys walking by, asking them to not mess up her big moment, and to respect their future coach. Scared, the boys do as they're told while Henrik watches in amusement. With the boys gone, the two finally lock lips, embracing each other in a passionate kiss, finally surrendering to the magnetic pull between them, and a testament to all they have overcome in these past days.